Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far with Los Angeles Thieves winning Major 4 in incredible fashion. They seem to believe they are favourites once again at going into the World Championship. Is this the case, or given Call of Duty Vanguard, will there be another winner, or could Los Angeles Thieves actually go back to back? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you are new as always, I greatly appreciate it. Everybody else on the channel, thanks very much indeed for doing that one. Loads of new support yesterday as well, on the verge of 80k. Let's crack on right with that one. And yeah, firstly here from Crimsix, that was good. They're kind of old-time duo, Crim and Scump. Different Crim this time around, but you know, who knows how these teams, of course, will perform at the World Championship. Obviously, New York right now just made the Grand Finals. Can they go one step better? That would be one of the most unbelievable storylines in Call of Duty history if they could somehow pull that one off. Of course, though, look, OpTic are going to try and do the same thing as well. Often, OpTic will tend to find they start the season rather strong, fall off a little bit to maybe regain a bit towards the end of the year, get a top 3 or something. If OpTic get top 3, they're not going to be happy with it, but honestly, based on their current performance, that's, you know, it's difficult to expect much better, but of course, they've got a couple of weeks to fix things up. Firstly, wanted to mention briefly some free agents going into next season. So Blast, if you guys remember this name, he was competing in, I think he was still competing in Modern Warfare, also quite notably back in World War II. He stepped away for, I think, to do Warzone stuff. He now wants to make the return, so we'll see how that works out for him, of course, because yeah, Modern Warfare 2, a lot of pros actually looking to come back for next year's game. Like, look, whether they're going to just be grinding through challenges, which seems like the reasonable option because it doesn't seem like expansion's coming, but who knows what Paris become, like who knows what team they pick up, because they could do anything over in Vegas as they are next year. Whether they'll rebrand as well, whether they're going to be the Las Vegas Legion, or whether they'll actually try and change like to a different brand to like get rid of the Legion name, I don't know. Or like whether another ownership group comes through and buys them out, which of course is the ideal scenario. Another name is Dido. If you guys are kind of OGs, you might remember the name Dido from, I think probably the last time he took competing seriously was, I think, World War II. He was still grinding a little bit, but a very notable name from, you know, Ghost, Advanced Warfare, played on some pretty good teams. I think he was even on FaZe briefly with some notable teammates. Strictly Business as well, I think was kind of the squad I remember him on most vividly. So I thought it was pretty cool that some of these guys trying to make the return. Of course, it does mean that challenges can be more stacked than ever, and yeah, the talent nowadays does seem to be rather different. Let's talk OpTic then, of course, real quick, because as they say, got to ice up for champs just over 2 weeks out to go. Look, they've got to do the final push as they generally do every single year, like just fully focus up. We've talked about some of their issues the last couple of days, really. Map pool control hasn't been so good, so they've got some things to work on. Obviously, look, their Search and Destroy has been rather good. Their Bacage Search and Destroy, especially, they clutched up a lot of big ones, but if you think about it, right, they had to clutch Game 5 versus Minnesota. Was it Game 5 against Boston? Oh, okay, it was Game 4 against Boston, we can see right here. It could have been Game 5 against Boston, though, based on the way this hardpoint was going, and then it was Game 5 versus Toronto, right? So, like, okay, some clutch victories, nothing emphatic particularly, even though it's difficult to be particularly emphatic in Call of Duty Vanguard here. Even FaZe struggled to take down Paris in their first losers round matchup, right? I think that was a Game 5 that ended up happening there, but, you know, OpTic, of course, like, they've got some work to do, but they could potentially make something happen, and the guys seem to be kind of getting locked in, as Illy says, like champs up next, right? And they've said the whole year, champs is the one that matters. That's what they want to win. Scum obviously wants his next ring, and look, they start on an even playing field with the rest of the guys, and they start up against Toronto Ultra, kind of their bogey team the last couple of seasons, but they did just beat them here, right? So I suppose that should fill them with some degree of confidence, and as Dashy says, you know, it's effectively the end game of the season, right? It's kind of surprising to me how quickly it's all come around, but yeah, August the 4th through to the 7th is the World Championship, and then it's Rostermania, baby, for like a couple of months before the game comes out at the end of October. And I'm sure, like, even though there aren't as many free agents this year as there maybe might have been, like, I think a lot of players are still locked into contracts. It's obviously a massive year to build a good roster, just because you're going into a Modern Warfare season, which is probably going to be 2 years long, right? Modern Warfare 2022 is going to be here, we believe, for 2 years of the CDL. And if that is the case, which it seems very likely to be the case, then this year you've got to build it, well, you've got to try and build a good team, because if you build a good team this season, it's also going to be good the season after, which is quite a beneficial aspect to actually having a good, like, off-season right here. So I'm sure teams might be throwing around some cash to try and make something happen, and there are plenty of, like, potentially big-name free agents as well, and lots of good players on bad teams this season who probably will be departing and might find their spots elsewhere. Crimsix thought this shot was really cold, actually, to be honest, here for the New York Sunliners before this game actually kicked off, right? Like, high-quality stuff. We saw this in the crowd perspective yesterday, but this is pretty cool as well. See you guys at Champs this Porlex, of course, somehow making it to qualify, and even as Clayster says right here, like, Paco saw me yesterday that being Hydra and asked, why are you here? And he said, mate, I'm here because you were sick and I was about to have to run a sub, like, what's going on? So, like, Clayster almost had to sub in, but thankfully Hydra could play, and that kind of storyline came to a nice end. Let's talk about Los Angeles Thieves. They walk away with a victory on the weekend. Honestly, you look at their run, it was pretty dominant, beating FaZe in the very first round. Both victories against FaZe were pretty convincing. Like, they both won 3-1, I think, on both occasions. Their control at this weekend was impeccable, especially in the losers finals up against against FaZe when they 3-0'd them, I think it was, on Tusk and Control, and they won both controls then in the grand finals. Like, that was incredibly impressive from Thieves, right? And it wasn't just Kenny turning up. Like, Octane has been playing quite well for a while, but he had an incredibly impactful moment as well here. Drazah did his job for sure and had his, like, he was honestly killing it in some of the series. And then Envoy and Kenny, to me, were the two that really needed to turn up this tournament, right? Because the SMG duo, like, teams live and die on their SMG duo, and this time it was Kenny especially that turned up. And when Kenny plays well, the whole team, it looked like a very different animal. Obviously, they've been working hard. It's cool to see they've stuck by this team and made it work. As Octane says, 1 win down, 1 to go. Back to the grind this week. So, of course, Octane and Kenny, like, if you look at the other players, Drazah and Envoy, they also haven't won a world championship either. But, like, Octane and Kenny are arguably two of the best players of all time to have not won a world championship. And this is what they're going to try and do. They find themselves in pretty perfect position to do it. There has been teams in the past that have won the event before the world championship and gone on to win the world championship. United, for example, in Black Ops 4, they won playoffs a couple of weeks before champs, went on to win champs as well. Now, this is Call of Duty Vanguard, and you can look at maybe the map pool that they were allowed to have here. They played a lot of Berlin, Search and Destroy, like other controls and stuff that are very good for them. So look, whether they can keep up that control dominance and whether they're allowed some of their clearly good maps right now at the World Championship is another question. So it's always difficult to stay on top anyway. And then adding to that, the fact that so many teams find it incredibly challenging to stay on top in Vanguard is another complicating factor. But they were playing the best COD this weekend. There's no doubt about it. They beat FaZe twice. They've never done that in their, well, history of the franchise. They only lost to New York in an absolute must-win series for New York to make champs, and then they beat them in the grand finals and looked pretty dominant, honestly, throughout the final few maps of that series. So I definitely think they were playing the best COD this weekend. Are they favourites for the World Championship, though? That's another question mark, right? Because we've seen in the past, like, teams can go back-to-back. Black Ops 4, for example, like, honestly, okay, 6 out of 6 this year, right? 6 events, 6 different winners. But if you look in COD history, there were plenty of games where there was, like, you know, good 5-6 teams competitive. Like, I'm pretty sure you even look back to an era like, I don't know, World War II or something, or Black Ops 4. There were like 4 or 5 teams that year winning like 7 or 8 events or whatever exactly it was, right? I think there was a back-to-back from United, a back-to-back from 100 Thieves back in the day. Like, it can happen, but often there are different teams coming out on top even in a good year, and especially with the competition this season. But like, yeah, back-to-backs do happen. Can Thieves do it? Like, are they the favourites? I think that's something you guys will have to answer in the comment section below. Thought this is cool as well from Kenny's girlfriend, sets up this in his room. But like, yeah, they were pretty dominant this past weekend, it's got to be said. And they do admittedly have a rather favourable bracket for them when they go here to the World Championship. And they were mentioning in an interview kind of like after the match, they were talking in interviews and stuff. And I believe Deserto even went on to kind of ask them some separate questions after their victory, where they explained what they believe is actually, well, them being the favourites here. So they described their teamwork as immaculate, their Call of Duty pretty much perfect on the weekends, scrambling their opponents. And then this was an interesting phrase here from Kenny. He was asked what do they think their potential is at the, of course, the CWO World Championship, $2.5 million playoffs, right? There's a lot of money on the line, of course, in a couple of weekends' time. And Kenny asserts grand finals. I don't think there's any match or any team right now that I'm looking to play. I think we are the team to beat. So grand finals is the goal, right? So that's the thing really Kenny said, even at the start of the season. Thieves said they want to be there on Championship Sunday every week. Now they're saying they want to be in grand finals at the World Championships and try and do it again. Kenny and Octane both have been a runner-up at the World Championship. Kenny, I guess, has been a runner-up twice, right? Because TK were in the grand finals back in World War II, where he was a runner-up that year and then a runner-up again in Black Ops 4. So, like, they're going to look to go one better here. If Kenny gets a third, second place at champs, that's going to be pretty tough. But it's not out of the question, right, with the way these teams are playing and the fact that FaZe hasn't yet won an event this year, and that is the way things obviously are trending right now. But can they possibly keep up this level of dominance that they had during this event? A 15-8 map counts, 4-1 series win-loss. The only series they lost, of course, was that New York series 3-1, but they beat FaZe twice, beat Toronto once, beat New York again in the grand finals. Like, a very impressive run, all things considered. And look at the consistency of the KDs here. Like, we can look at the modes as well. 6-4 in Hardpoint, 4-3 in Search, but this 5-1 in Control, 3-0 on Berlin is rather interesting. Can they possibly keep that up, right? Because we've seen many teams so far this year that have had brief periods, and in OpTic's case, it wasn't brief, it was actually a few months of dominance in Control, and like, this was kind of what got them over the line here, right? It was, to me, really, the 2 controls they won in the grand finals, those were the difference makers in terms of actually winning this tournament. I think, honestly, it's tough to say what the best series they played was of the weekend, but as soon as they beat Toronto 3-0, and they just smoked them off the server, like, that just showed to me that they really meant business this weekend. And I mean, Kenny has a 1.09 in Hardpoint. Like, obviously in Search and Destroy, he has a ridiculous KD in Surge and the Control, but look at this Hardpoint, right? The fact that they're all spread between a 1.06 and a 1.09, and the engagement numbers between Kenny and Envoy are basically the same or very similar. Drazah and Octane very similar as well, but one step behind. Like, those numbers are just perfect for what Los Angeles Thieves, I'm sure, wanted to achieve. And I suppose if you're going to say they're not favourites, you've got to decide someone else who actually is going to be the favourite for the event. So these are the odds right now going into this tournament. FaZe still technically favourites for the event. I think this is kind of makes sense, right? They're number 1 in CDL standings. They haven't won an event so far this year. You feel like champs has got to be their event. But if FaZe were to win, like, you know, now it would be Simp and Arcitys' third ring if they were to win here. Like, that would be kind of something, and all on LAN as well. Black Ops 4 last year and this season as well. So if that happens, that would be remarkable. We'll talk about FaZe a little bit later today. Thieves apparently the second favourites for this event behind FaZe. Maybe that makes sense, all things considered, just because we don't really know if they're going to be able to keep up this performance going into champs, just because every other winner has kind of failed to do that. OpTic obviously are probably rather too high here, honestly, at third. Like at New York, probably right now, you'd have to say they're more favoured than OpTic, but maybe the bookies are just thinking, okay, they're going to come third at the World Championship again, like they seem to do every single year. Then Toronto probably being somewhat underrated here, to be honest. Like it goes New York, Seattle Surge, Toronto, London, and Boston Breach. So I think honestly, like this order is not a bad order in terms of what you might expect for the actual placements this event, to be honest. Of course, it makes sense when you look at it from this angle, but yeah, maybe Los Angeles Thieves aren't quite favourites, but they're not far off, right? And it's only 2 weeks apart, really. It's not a massive difference between now and the World Championship itself. There's a very realistic possibility that they can do some damage here, right? And honestly, I feel like they have the more favourable side of the bracket. If you're FaZe, who are kind of the other favourites for the event, which is probably why New York aren't considered so highly here, just because they have to play FaZe in the first rounds. But like, okay, FaZe play New York, and if they win that, they probably play, I mean, they might play Surge, they might play Ravens. Surge are a team that's often had FaZe's number, so I feel like FaZe have got to be more concerned about their side of the bracket. If they beat Subliners and play Ravens, they should be good to get to the winners final. But I feel like Thieves can be more confident here. They play Breach round 1, like that is certainly an easier game on paper. Then if they win that, they either play OpTic or Ultra. Neither of those games are easy, but the way that Thieves are currently playing, I feel like they would have manhandled OpTic, to be honest, this weekend, and Ultra they 3-0'd them, right? So I feel like Thieves have to be incredibly confident that they can at least get to the winners final, and that's guaranteed top 3 if they were to make it there. Whereas FaZe, there's a decent argument to be made that they might lose to New York in that first round, right? So I feel like Thieves actually have a very good chance of doing some serious damage this tournament. One team, of course, that's not going to do any damage is the Florida Mutineers, because they're not even here. And well, I thought this is pretty funny from New York, because they tweeted it at New York back in February. Does they put this skin on? Now we can't win a half points. Put this skin on, and now we can't qualify for champs, right? So they were saving this up for several months, and you know, I don't really think Florida could have a good response to this one. But yeah, just a few days away now, August 4th through the 7th. That's when the World Championship kicks off. So not far away at all. We're going to find out who the winner is going to be. A lot of money on the line as well. $2.5 million. Like the fact that all these majors have been, what, $500,000 each. The winner gets like 200k. You don't even have to place that well at the World Championship to get 200k for your team this time around. Of course, it's in LA, so, you know, the players are going to have to pay a lot of tax on that. Unlucky lads. Crimsix complains about that every single year. But look, if he wins the World Championship, he's probably not going to be complaining too much about it. And just to mention this as well, just because we kind of mentioned earlier about Octane and Kenny being arguably two of the best players to have never won a World Championship, Octane has now won different, well, titles on 5 different games, which is pretty impressive, right? To win a championship on 5 different games. Like, Scump has the most at 10, which is just completely absurd. Won championships on 10 different titles. Crim has 7, Karma has 6, Formula 6, Jacob has 6, and then there's only 4 players, or only 5 players now at, well, winning championships on 5 different games. So incredible that really Octane joins this list, and this list includes all world champions, right? Slasher, John, Aches, and Clayster, all world champions. Like Aches and Clayster, of course, 2, 3-time world champions respectively. John and Slasher just won it once. Jacob, 2-time world champion. Formal, Scum, 1-time world champion. Karma and Crimsix, 3-time, right? And Octane is here with the 0. So maybe that's a sign that this year could be different for Octane. Very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit on the like button. Tells the YouTube gods this is a good video. That is like you should see it as well. And hope grow the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you as always. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.